Hello, and welcome to Unlimited Parenting, where we discuss having children with disabilities or special healthcare needs. I'm Allison, and with me today is a very special and esteemed guest, Cait Christensen. We are picking up on the second half of her story. I'm so glad that you've come back to hear the ending because she's going to give a lot of great information. So we're going to pick up right where we left off, and I am going to segue right into Cait talking about her experience with developmental preschool.
Starting the IEP process, like the transition from developmental preschool to elementary school, going to kindergarten with Max, I had a rough go. Sweet little Max. The transition team wasn't going to allow the DDA, the person that was contracted to work with my son at school, they weren't going to renew those contracts.
Oh.
And they were going to be working with another agency. And I said, well, we just started this process, right? We're still, this person knows my son. Those are scary moments as parents, right? Now I can kind of see the beauty and change and new people, and it's more people to understand and to learn about autism. But the training, the changing of hands is still a very difficult subject because it's like, my gosh, another person I have to teach how my son functions in this world and how this world is not set up for him and what's the best way to help him. So we went to that meeting, and I want to say it was the last year of developmental preschool, because that's when we started this process, and I was questioning whether or not to keep him in developmental preschool. And I said, the person who was she was the director for the preschool and then my team for the new school. And they were like, well, we don't want him to have his talking device. We want to make sure that he actually is nonverbal. We want to see how he does without it.
We want to make sure he actually is nonverbal. Okay.
Yeah. We want to make sure he actually needs it, and we want to see how he communicates without it.
Okay.
And this was my first experience in advocacy where I used my big girl voice. I was very proud of this moment. I'm still proud of this moment because I looked directly in the face.
Yes, Cait. Yes.
Yes. I looked her directly in the face and I said, would you like me to take your voice box out and see if you learn how to communicate in a month? You want to see how that looks like for you?
Oh, powerful.
And the whole room, I was so angry. I'm pretty sure it wasn't a calm moment. I was probably crying because when I'm angry, I cry. And I turned beet red, like all the blood that could possibly go from any point of my body goes to my face and my chest. And so I look like I'm about to explode with just everywhere. Like I'm so hot. Like it feels like a hot flash. And I know it's there, and I know they're all looking at me like, oh my gosh, this lady's face is about to explode. And I'm like, I'm going to take your voice box out so you can see how you function day to day for 30 days. What do you think about that? She's like, well, that's not really what that means. I'm like, it really does, because you're essentially saying that you want to take away the only form of communication he's known that has been effective for him. And you just want to see, like it's some kind of experiment. And that was when I left that meeting, and the person who worked with Max, she had just casually said, hey, you know what? You should contact Idaho Parents Unlimited. I'm like, what is that? And she goes, oh, well, they're a place that can help you with all this stuff, with IEPs and all that. And I go, okay, where did these people come from? Because I needed these people years ago.
Right.
And she's like, go ahead, here's the phone number. I'm like, all right. So I called, and I talked to a person who's not there anymore, but I spoke to her on the phone, and I'm bawling. Never met this person. I'm sure you get calls like this all the time. Never met this person. I'm bawling. I'm in, not understanding how meeting went so badly. And she tells me, oh, it sounds like, you might need a facilitated meeting. I'm like, what is that? What does that mean? Like, what else? What new thing do I have to do now?
Right.
Like, I'm just like, okay. And she's like, don't worry. Like, we'll get this set up. And, we have to contact the State Department of Education, talk about dispute resolution. And what they do is they have this facilitator and they'll come to your meeting and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, so how much is this going to cost? Because speech therapy was already so much, before that. And I was like, okay, what does this cost? She's like, nope, this is completely free to you. And I'm just like bawling my eyes out. And she is just sitting there being so gracious with me and understanding. Like, IPUL staff, I love you all so much.
Oh,
you just get it. You just get it. When you walk this life, you just get it. And at that point, I didn't know that this is who they were. And so I was just so thrilled to just hear somebody tell me that I wasn't crazy,
or that you had options,
right? Or that I had options, or that what you're asking for is not like, this isn't wrong. Like, you're doing the right thing. And so, so we had our facilitated meeting, and the facilitator made it very clear that if I did not want to put him in developmental preschool that last year, that I did not have to. And because his 3-year eval was still going to be good. So when we did the transition meeting to kindergarten, it would be just fine. And he would still be, we wouldn't have to do that process again. And we could just write a new IEP. I said, great, sounds awesome. I don't want him to be with these people anymore who think that he's sometimes, faking being nonverbal. I don't know. So I pulled him out and put him in HI, habilitative intervention for full-time for that next school year until we started kindergarten. And we saw so much growth, and especially with communication, and really just focused in on, understanding how OT works in a classroom, the functionality with communication between his peers, his teachers, the functionality in a classroom of like I said, what OT looks like in a classroom setting, how to help him with, compression clothing, weighted lap pads, bands at the bottom of the chair, weighted pencils, all of that, which OT is my love language. And I'm actually realized where my passion lies. Cause I had a career before, and I had gone to culinary school. I was a chef and a pastry chef. This world was just the total opposite of where I had come from. And so, just currently present day, I'm attempting to go back to school to be an OT. It has changed our whole life. I love seeing a kiddo go from not really knowing how their body is in a classroom setting and see them successful. And I think there's just such beauty in that, because we all don't fit in this box. We all don't fit in these perfect little cookie cutter shapes. And OT busts through those little boxes, and it's like, no, let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this. And I am eternally grateful. Speech therapists are my jam too, but there's just something so special about OT that has my heart. And he went into kindergarten just ready. He was so ready. He's always been, my oldest has always been ready for, he's never been like I said, he crawled early and walked early and got all these teeth. And the second I drop him off at these places, it's not he's never been one to cling to me. He's like, bye.
He's ready for an adventure.
He was ready. With Benjamin, it was a big ups and downs, big behaviors, lots of protesting. Transitions were difficult for him. Complete opposite, of course. So I was learning all new skills with Benjamin that I did not get to learn with Maximus. So we were, learning about different language to use with Benjamin when it came to transition.
Yeah.
And what helped him was that first then. So, and I still use it to this day. First, we're going to do an unpreferred. Then we're going to do a preferred. And that's how we slowly started to see his growth and progress when it came to doing things he didn't want to do. He's an extremely literal kid. He does not, sarcasm has no place in his world. And he will tell you exactly what he's feeling, exactly when he feels it. And we've had some real fun scenarios over the years with complete strangers when it came to, protesting. Literal protest. Like, I'm a very active member of my community, and I enjoy participating in things that give us that right and ability to protest. So I take him with me. I take all the kids with me, but yeah. So just recently we were actually walking, and I was wearing a shirt because, I wear these. Okay. This shout out to this company is called Kind Cotton Tees. They are a movement that creates these t-shirts that are for a huge group of lots of different band guns, not books, but this is like this one's like my shirt that I'm wearing now. It's like, you are seen, you are loved, you are valued. It's for Pride Month for June. Then there's empower, educate, like teacher t-shirts, supporting our teachers, supporting. There's so many different movements, and then a percentage of these profits go back to getting books for kids in schools, and they donate large amounts of books for schools. And so I get this monthly t-shirt that comes. And so I'm walking to the store with Benjamin, and we're going to, I don't know what store it was, but I'm wearing a t-shirt that says like love is love, and something about, I think it was about neurodiversity, but this one I think said love is love. And it's got all the rainbowy colors, and I love wearing these shirts because they're, one, super comfortable and soft, but two, I love the messages that they have on them. And a gentleman decides to flip me the bird.
Oh.
A complete stranger flips me the bird, and
in front of your kids.
Benjamin knows what that. Yes, but Benjamin knows what that means because we've had to talk about it in the past because it happened at school. I have some fun conversations with Ben's teachers, and
I imagine
Benjamin said, Benjamin just sees everything, and he looks, and he stops dead in his tracks. He says, "Hey, you can't do that. That means this, right?" We all know what's in the bird off means. And he says the literal word, and he's got his finger right off this guy. Like, Ben is a very literal person. He's like, "You can't say that. That means this, and that's not nice."
Yeah, you're breaking the rules.
And I know. And this person's face was like full of shock because he did not expect my sweet little 10-year-old boy to do that. But we have talked a lot about, okay, that's a very powerful thing. It sends a very strong message, and this is what it means. And I'm always very honest with my boys about those kinds of things, especially with Benjamin, because he's a literal kid and he knows exactly what these things mean. And this person didn't say anything. And I'm like, I said, Benjamin, it's okay. Like, it's all right. Thank you. So it's not a nice thing to do. And we're just going to go back. And he just kept going, "That's not nice. He shouldn't do that. That is mean." And I'm like, "It's okay, buddy. It's all right. Let's go to the car." So we get to the car. And of course, in the car, I'm like, my internal mom, like, I'm just like, yes! Like, I'm so pumped that my son, like, stood up in that moment to understand that this was something that was ugly and gross, and like, don't say that. Like, and of course I was going to ignore it, right? Like, I was going to ignore it, whatever. But I was very proud in that moment of my son, because we involve our kids a lot in the process of, IEPs, and And they are very much in those meetings and a part of that process. And that right there for me was his little advocate, like his little ball of fire, as I call it, in the gut, right? That like is growing for him. And it was just, in an ugly situation, it was a beautiful moment for me as a mom to see.
Yeah.
And of course, he still talks about it to this day. Like, remember that guy who said this to you?
It's a core memory.
It is. And plus his memory, because of the echolalia and his ability to memorize things and so vividly, I don't think he'll ever forget it, honestly. Echolalia is so incredible. I've been to a couple conferences, but I remember the first advice I ever received from our speech therapist about echolalia, when it came to Benjamin especially, she said, insert yourself into the conversation. Because I said, he's talking so fast. I don't know what he's saying. I don't know how, like, because at first it was a bunch of like mumbling, right? And then he would like throw in a couple words that I could understand. And so she's like, throw yourself into the conversation. So like when he started being more clear with his words as he got older, he would say, I want to go, we're going to go to the market today. I'm like, we're going to go to the market? We are? What are we going to get? And he'd look at me and he'd go, no, that's not what I meant. That's not what I mean. And I go, well, you said we're going to go to the market. He's like, well, I want chips. I was like, you want to go to the market to get chips? Yes, I want to go to the market to get chips. So slowly we started seeing that change from a scripted part of a show turn into his wants and needs. So that communication changed a lot there for us. So, and we started noticing that all the scripts, like even when he would say it and it was out of context for that scenario, it was very much in context for the meaning behind the phrase or the sentence or the whole paragraph of what he was saying. And I'm like, wow, like it's kind of incredible. Like he's using it in correct context.
He was always trying to communicate, right?
He was. And part of me felt so bad because I was like, wow, I'm finally getting it a few years after diagnosis to where I could not. I'm like, I want to, when you get in the car after school, I say, Ben, how was your day? And then he would say something scripted thing. I'm like, oh, buddy, that sounds amazing. But I never knew. But like now, when he comes home from school, and he still is very much like, like a lot of kids, like, how was your day? Great. But I'll say, what did you do in class today that made you happy? And he's like, oh, well, I got to go to, I got to do this, or I got to make popcorn, or I was able to do, wow, buddy, tell me more. And then he'll say, like, talking about tell me more, he'll still insert some script, but then he'll bring out some original context too. And so it's kind of like a mix of scripting and original context from him. And it's kind of beautiful, and I love it. And it's not kind of beautiful, it is beautiful. And I enjoy that part of him. And I think finding the joy in like somebody else who doesn't have a kiddo, like, and just has like a typical conversation with their child and they give a typical answer. And, there's beauty in that too. But somebody who it doesn't come as easily, I should say, that you really had to fight for to understand and to make sense of things.
It carries
really
a different weight.
It does. And, don't get me wrong. There are days when I go to a store and I see a kiddo who's my oldest son's age, who is telling their mom about their day and saying, hey, they really want this thing or that thing or this thing. Or, this is how my day went, or talking about a sports team that they're on. I get emotional. Some days it can be hard to see a version that I thought my child would be, but at the same time, I am the mother I am because of him and because of everything that he and Benjamin and Samuel have all taught me. And comparing myself to others, I learned very quickly will not go very far. to help your mental health at all.
100%.
And I did learn very quickly. That mental health and taking care of yourself, either with medication or therapy or both, they always talk about me time and taking a bubble bath. I'm like, no, that's not my version of self-care. My version of self-care is my therapy session. My medication is self-care, and making sure I'm taking my medication to help with my anxiety. That is my self-care. And I will forget. There are days when I don't take it, or a week when I don't take it. And then I'm like, wait, what's going on with me? Something feels off. And I'm like, oh no, like I haven't taken my anxiety meds for a week. Like what has happened? And that affects a lot too, because I'm the one that, my husband is an amazing partner as well. And he's very hands-on, and he goes to all these appointments too. And in the beginning, he was my ride or die. He still is my ride or die, and an incredible partner. And I mean, just everything that, I know that it can be difficult for parents when you've got a kiddo with a disability and special needs, and can be very straining on a marriage. I will say, we've somehow managed to find our solid ground with each other. And, there are difficult days. There are difficult conversations sometimes. And sometimes we're harder on Ben than we are on Max, but the expectations shouldn't be any different. But yet sometimes we make those exceptions because he's nonverbal, and I don't, there's just some things as a parent, you make those choices, and sometimes they're not the right choices. And you call me out on it. Well, would you do that for Max? Or would you do that for Ben the same way you did it for Max? I'm like, well, no, I wouldn't. Thanks for calling me out. Like I try to hold the expectations high and for all my kids. And the partnership has not been so, like, I couldn't be the mom I am without my partner. I'm just truly grateful for him on a day-to-day basis. He truly is the best partner for me and the father to our kiddos. So I'm very grateful. It's a long road. And like I said, that advice I got with the check marks and the taking it one step at a time is slowly over time, I realized that that's the advice that I generally will give to parents now when I help them with the IEP process or with Medicaid or trying to figure out Katie Beckett. I will tell them to one day at a time, one checkbox, and just go down the list of what you need to do. So when I started, when the boys are all settled in school and IEPs were going and my youngest was in preschool and, I'm starting to find my footing again, is when I started to dive into helping other parents, because I was like, I never want to feel another parent to feel that way that I felt, where I didn't know what to do or who to turn to or where to go. So when I first had talked to IPUL, when that whole facilitated meeting had happened, I said, okay, where can I learn how to do this more effectively, right? So I started going to trainings. We had them in person then up here in the north. We don't have them up here in the north in person right now. I hope to have them back one day. But she would do monthly trainings. I think I went to the IEP training, which is the same training every time, but yeah. You learn something new. You learn something new every time. I will say that. I still learn something new every time. I think I went to that training 12 times, maybe 15.
Wow.
At least. And that's how I started to really understand the IEP process, my rights as a parent, my son's rights, what that looks like, how to build an effective IEP, how to, create that really solid, strong, strength-based IEP. And that was literally all because of the training I received from Idaho Parents Unlimited. So it was all free. And I was like, I just dove in. My husband would come home from work. I'd go to the nightly training that we had at the hospital. And then the next month maybe it was an IEP. It was strength-based IEPs or something else. And I would go and I would learn and bring that home. And I mean, I can't even tell you, like I said, it had to be a dozen times at least of these trainings. And so over time, just word of mouth, I would just tell parents, like, here's what you can do to help yourself and help your child. And I just started slowly being somebody that I would get random calls. Hey, my friend so-and-so told me to call you to help. And I'm like, oh, great, let's talk. And that was my goal, was to just be that first lifeline to where I could pass off to somebody who knew more than me, or ask a question if I didn't know the answer. And that's how I started slowly to learn more and more. And now over the last 9 years, almost a decade, that's what I do. And I will, to this day, still get calls. I take probably half a dozen calls a week.
Oh, you're so instrumental in your community.
Well, from parents who are just, I started volunteering. I started volunteering at the Autism Society here locally. And that's where I met a lot of people too, and parents, and getting to know, those families, and getting to know, the ins and outs of, I know this feels overwhelming, but there's never a brick wall. There's always a fork in the road. So we can always pick a path, right? Like the brick wall, you feel like you're at the end, but there's always a fork. Let's choose this path or this path. Which way would you like to go? Okay, now there's another fork or another decision to make. It never hits the end for me. I feel like there's always new ways to approach things. So, like I said, now I got a call just a couple, this is last year, I think, the owner of our DDA agency is like, well, I've got a case manager at Health and Welfare who used to work for me, and she'd like to be able to refer parents to you. I'm like, well, I'm just a parent, but if they need somebody to talk to quickly before they can get to the IPUL staff, yeah, absolutely. And that's just kind of how I worked. I've been a volunteer for 10 years, and I love it. I love being able to help a parent in that moment. It's my kind of therapy, honestly. When they call, I know what to do. I know you're feeling frustrated. Here's what you can do. Here's what like I always preface, right? I'm not legal advice. I'm a volunteer, and I'm a parent, and, but here are your resources. And I think another good point to make too is that I'm not there to do it for them. Just like you guys aren't with IPUL staff. Like, you're not there to do it for them. You are there to help educate them and guide them through the process as best as you can. But I think it's important as a parent to gain those skills to do it for yourself and with your child. Because if you have somebody there with you doing it for you, what do you learn? What are you going to learn from this process? That this isn't a sprint. This is a marathon, and you need to be able to accumulate those skills and know the routes to go when it's your turn. And I always tell the parents after I get off the phone or we solve some big problem, do this for another parent. That is that's your responsibility. Pay it forward to another parent who might be in this crisis. That's all I ask. And if you don't know the answer, find somebody who does. Call me or call IPUL, or let's figure it out together. And I think that's the beauty in volunteering in your community, but also if you've been a stay-at-home mom and you haven't had job experience for a number of years, this is how I gained, I guess, job experience, but also felt like I had a place in this world that I didn't see coming. And so this last year, just within the last, school year, I had a friend of mine who's a special ed teacher here in our district, and she told me, she's like, because I was looking for something. I was like, I can't be full-time. I can't, I just want something that kind of my kids are all in school. I just would really like to, maybe have a job, but I don't know what that looks like. And she's like, what about substitute? What about being a substitute teacher? I'm like, I'm not a teacher. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to be responsible for a room full of kids. She's like, no, you don't have to be like a teacher in a classroom setting. You could be like a sub-para. You could fill in on those days. You could, that kind of thing. You could figure out what works best for you. And so she's like, just come to on your first sub assignment, come to my school and I'll just kind of walk you through it. And so she did, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with being a sub-para, a one-on-one with a student. I did learn very quickly that I cannot work in a classroom with the similar behaviors and struggles I have at home with my children. As much knowledge as I've gained over the years of working with a nonverbal kiddo, behaviors, understanding, the ins and outs of that, for my own mental health, I wasn't able to do that at work and do it at home.
Boundaries are important.
And I think yes. And that is something very new that I had learned in therapy in the last 4 years of being in therapy. But so as beautiful as these programs are and how grateful I am for these teams of people, I couldn't be that parent in those classrooms or those settings with those students. And I'm still able to give advice and to be able to help in scenarios, but full-time, even part-time, I saw that it was not helping me. So I ended up finding a school here locally where my youngest goes, and they have a student who was needing a one-on-one, but I'm still a sub. I don't work for the district. And they said, if you could give us a couple days a week, a few days a week of working with this student, we could schedule for the rest of the year, and it just gives you 2-3 days a week. And, I said, So I went to work with this student, and the first day on the notes it said, this student will not like you working with him at all. And I was like,
Thanks for the warning.
This sounds fun. And that was back at the beginning of this semester. So it's only been this last semester that I started working with this student. I will tell you what, this kiddo is one of my favorite kiddos to work with ever. And he requests me. He has gone to, which he received an IEP this semester, and he has gone to his IEP meetings because of me basically discussing with him what an IEP is and how important it is for his education. He's a little older. He's, not kindergarten, first grade. He's in fourth grade. But I was able to help him understand how important that IEP was. I was like, this document is here to help you. Like, it's here to help you. And he's like, no, it's not. And so I break it down for him. I'm like, look, here's all the specifics. Like, you want to go over it? He's like, sure. So we talk about it, and we talk about the importance of goals and goal setting. Like, you're doing great. He likes to see the data. He likes to see how he's doing on a day-to-day basis. And I show him, I'm very clear, like, today has not been a super great day. Can we turn this around? And he sees the data. He's like, oh, okay. And he'll, he understands like where he's in his day and how we're doing and where we're going. And so next year I'd probably request to be with him again for a couple days a week and have that consistency, because I really do enjoy, like, even on the bad days, I enjoy, like, on the rough days when he doesn't want to do work at all. I enjoy his perspective, and he's taught me so much on seeing the other side of the fence when it comes to the IEP process too.
And
being in the classroom. Go ahead.
You're just so passionate about it.
I love it. I love IEPs. I love the IEP meeting. There's some, like this last year, I was a little anxious about this transition to middle school for my oldest son. But after being in the school this year and seeing our tremendous educators in our district, especially, like my friend works at the high school, she sits down with her students and they go over their goals. Like, she's like very much like, look at this. What do you think about this goal? How does this goal make you feel? Do you think this goal is reachable? Like, what is your true perspective on this? And I was sitting down and I was just observing, and I'm like, what a phenomenal educator she is. But how that can like grow with them, like be a part of the discussion, be a part of this document that gives you and supplies you with a path to your education and what that looks like in a classroom setting. And so I truly appreciate the IP, and after seeing educators and how they're to implement them in a classroom, it gives me a new perspective on what's realistic and what's not with an IEP as well. I mean, obviously we set goals and we, realistic goals, and we try to make that work. But I mean, these teachers in my district, we've had some amazing SPED teachers and gen ed teachers. We've had some rough ones. When I lose the good ones, and we lost a good one last year, she left and went to work for another Idaho agency. I bawled like a baby. Because when you find your people and you find the people who speak your children's language, as I like to say, you don't want to see them go. And that's hard. But I do know and have come to appreciate that change is also good for my children, because we need to actively involve more people in understanding neurodiversity, acceptance of these diagnoses, of all disabilities, and to see that our children have a place in school, in this world, in a world that wasn't designed for them. And I, like I said, working with the students and in the school and being able to be around these kids, like that's how I decided I wanted to be an OT for myself and be able to be in these classrooms and work with these students and see that progress. And it can be a beautiful process. And I know that there's a lot of struggles, and I know a lot of parents have a lot of difficulty with their teens. And I just want you to know that there is beauty to this process, and that they can be cohesive, beautiful, strength-based plans that your children can thrive on. And just learning to bend with some of, it's like the ins and outs of learning this process. Like you have to bend a little, right? You bend. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And they're always changeable. If something doesn't work, let's fix it. What's another way to go about this? That's kind of where my strength lies. Is I'm never one to, nope, didn't work. It's all done. Like I said, I don't hit a brick wall. I hit a fork in the road. So
absolutely,
which direction can we go?
And it's definitely clearly one of your strengths. And I just want to say truly, thank you so much for taking some time to just really talk about it.
Yeah.
And your story it's going to help. Hopefully you don't get hundreds of people flooding your phone, but
I love it. I love when I get a call I say love it, but when a parent is in distress and they call and they don't know what to do, and by the time we get off the phone, they'll say, oh my gosh, that was so incredibly helpful, or wow, I didn't even know that existed. That's where I get my joy from.
Your payment.
It is. That's and I do get paid now by the district as a sub, which is nice. But there is beauty in being this volunteer, as somebody not having to worry about where this, like it's with IPUL, right? You don't have to pay for our services, And so there's a beauty in knowing that you can get help that you need without having to fork up some cash for it. Like we should just be able to I just need a little help to know how to navigate this.
And nudge in the right direction.
Exactly. So that's my goal, is to never let another parent feel like I did, where I didn't know which direction to go. And I tell you what, when I first got my hands on a set of IPUL pamphlets, also I took it straight to that pediatrician's office that we no longer go to. Who didn't know where to send me when my son wasn't talking. I took stacks of pamphlets and magnets and pens and information. And they're a huge office up here. I mean, they have a ton of locations. And I just said, I don't want another parent to feel this way. I don't want them to know not where to go. And now I'll do that in our doctor's office now. They had a flyer on the wall for some organization for autism that literally, I went to the website while I was sitting there waiting, and it said website not available.
Oh.
So the doctor comes in, and I was like, hey. He's like, how are you doing? I'm like, great. That website doesn't work. And And they're like, well, what do you mean? I was like, I just typed it in. It doesn't take you to anything. And if a parent is needing information about autism, like, I really feel like that would be a little frustrating. So I came back and I brought a bunch of pamphlets and I brought a bunch of pens and, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like those little moments in being effective in your community and making those small effective changes to making sure somebody never feels that way. And that is my goal. How I became part of the board was I went to parent leadership back in 2018. So I signed up. I was like, okay, teach me all the things, right? I had been to like a dozen of these IEP trainings. I'm like a week away of just nonstop learning. I'm like, yes, sign me up. Signed up, did the interview, got accepted, had this really beautiful week up here in Laclede, Idaho, which is up by Sandpoint. Met some incredible women that I will never forget. Their stories, their families. We're still very much connected and we'll use each other as resources often. And I put in my one of these little books Sarah made, of course, that has like all the little quotes and little things that Sarah makes, because that's what Sarah does. And
of course.
sorry, she's one of the IPUL staff too. And she made these little booklets, and it was like writing down our goals. Like, what were some, in the next 5 years, what are some goals for you? My first goal was to be an IPUL board member. And I didn't know what that looked like. I just know I wanted to be involved to an organization who had given me so much power and like knowledge that I was like, how can I pay this back? Or how can I pay it forward, I guess, essentially. So I was like, I don't know what that looks like. I've never been a board member to anything in my life. I thought the only thing I know about board members is like from TV, where it's like you wear a power suit and you go to a sky-rise building and you're like running a company. I didn't know what a board member looked like. I didn't even know that nonprofits had boards. I was completely clueless. And at the time, I don't think they were taking any board members, so I didn't have that opportunity then. But I did join a local organization, the Autism Society of North Idaho. I served on that board as vice president for, I want to say 3 years. I served my term there. And then in the midst of my term ending with them, I interviewed for IPUL and became a board member. And in my first meeting was elected vice president. And then I became president, and now I've been the board chair for a couple years. Thoroughly enjoy it. I enjoy watching this organization grow. I enjoy watching staff members grow in their areas and like learning more about them and their families. And gosh, what can we do systemically? What can I do to advocate as far as that goes? And that's when I learned about partners in policymaking, which then I joined last year and did Partners in Policymaking, which incredible program. So I did that for a year, and then graduated this last, what was that, 2020, 2021, I think, and met some of my favorite people in the whole world through that program. And really understanding systemic advocacy and policy changes and writing letters to legislators and making effective change here in Idaho and what that looks like and actually putting it into action. What do you do next?
And I love that about you. It never stops. It's just, okay, well, I've conquered this, and now where else can I help?
Yeah, where else can we help? Where else can we go? Who else needs a little guidance? Who else needs a little love? But it's like, I want to learn more too, and I'm growing too. And that's why, like I said, going back to school it's going to take me a long time with my kids and life and stuff, but going back to school and OT, which essentially starts me from scratch. Like I said, I was a chef and a pastry chef. So if we could go from one career to another that has nothing in common, it's these two careers.
Okay.
But like I said, in the last 10 years of being in OT's offices and being in those appointments and how many hours of OT I've done in the last 10 years, with my sons, I feel like this is my calling. This is where my heart is too, and all this other work that I've been able to do, and the volunteer work, and the boards, and all that information will only help if going forward, because I can pass that information on to other parents. Like, hey, look, do you know that this organization is available to you if you have questions or need extra help? Here, like, I'm very well versed in my community and what we have to offer. So if a parent does come up with that, that's what I'm here for. And I know parents sometimes as their kids age out and they get older, they stop, you're not as active as you once were. And I don't know if that'll happen one day, but I will always be available to guide that person in the right direction, because I will never let another parent feel the way that I felt in the beginning of this diagnosis process for my children. So my kids are thriving. My husband has epilepsy. So, neurodiversity is very much in our home. That's just who we are as people and as a family. And, I go into the schools and we talk about diversity and read books. And I used to bring Sesame Street books, the Julia books. I used to bring those to kindergarten classes. So we could start at the beginning, like kindergarten. Let's talk about, differences among our peers. And so one day, need a book for your family and how to discuss what autism is or what disabilities are in general, because that book talks a lot about other disabilities as well. And there's another phenomenal book that I love for children. It's called Just Ask. But she had type 1 diabetes. And so as a child, she would have to do shots and give herself injections and things like that. And her biggest thing as a child with diabetes was saying that I just wanted people to ask if they had questions. And it goes through a ton of different diagnoses. There's a kiddo in a wheelchair. There's a person with nut allergies. I want to say it probably goes through about 10 different diagnoses, I think, maybe less. It all comes back to just ask. And I read that book to a couple of classes, and then I've actually had a couple teachers in first grade and kindergarten who've asked to borrow it. And I've actually bought a few copies for some of these teachers so they can keep it in their classrooms year round. But this book really does open the conversation to what makes us all different. But just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. It's different. We're all different. We're all living in this vast world of just people who are living their own very authentic self life. And we should try to learn as much as we can about each other. And so that's me in a nutshell. That's our family in a nutshell. I don't know.
You're just truly inspiring, and the amount of effort and time that you put not only into your kids, not only into your family, but into your community and IPUL on the board. And we're just so lucky and thankful to have you. And we're just so proud of you. And we know that when you're done with OT and you're ready to just be your own therapist in your practice, you're going to have people knocking down the door.
Yeah.
To get
I don't know
in.
what that looks for me yet. I'm like, I love the school setting. I love watching the OT. And just as a shout out to my child, my oldest, so he tested out of school-based OT services, okay? Direct OT services. He now has indirect. But I told the OT, I said, look, she's like, he's writing his name beautifully. He's doing all the things that qualify you for OT direct services, right? Like the threshold for that is like, 7%, and you have to qualify under this 7% window in the state of Idaho. And we got to the IEP meeting just last month, and she's in there and she's telling me, she's like, well, I don't need to do direct services with him anymore because he's met his goal. He's doing beautifully in the classroom, and he doesn't need my direct services anymore. I'm like, woo, woo! Like, I'm so thrilled. Like, as much as I love OT and as much as I love this OT, I said, does he get a certificate? Did he graduate from OT? Like, we've never graduated from anything yet. I'm like, so I just literally this morning, I took out his backpack to look through his binder, and she had made a special certificate just for Max saying he had graduated from OT, direct OT.
The sweetest.
And it's just so sweet. And I love the school-based OTs, and I love, I don't know if that's something that will be in my future or private, working with kiddos like in a clinic or something. But all I do know is that OT has made a huge impact on our lives and our family and all of this. I mean, IPUL, OTs, speech therapists, just the vast amount of people who have just see them as the beautiful people that they are. I could not be any more grateful to them and and what they've done for our family and the joy that they bring to my children, because my children want to see these people. They want to see them. They want to be with them, and I couldn't ask for anything more. So.
Well, thank you so much, everyone out there, for listening in. If you're in Idaho or planning on moving to Idaho and have any questions on systems or services for children with disabilities, please reach out to us on our website at ipulidaho.org. That's IPUL Idaho.org. Be sure to come back next time. Huge thank you to Cait for joining me today. Until then, I'm Allison, and this has been Unlimited Parenting.
Thanks for listening.